Happening now on Grid Tonight. The 2024 Repco Supercars Championship season kicks off this weekend at Mount Panorama. With Gisbergen and Brodie Kostecki out, who will be the new championship's favorite entering this season? The first day of Formula One preseason testing is in the books. What did we learn from day one in Bahrain? Hello to all our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambeth, and with me is Joshua Burch and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. We encourage everyone to comment in the chat, ask questions, and support us through Super Chat. And we're very happy to announce that Grid Network just passed 900 subscribers. Please subscribe today and help us reach the special milestone of 1,000 subscribers ASAP. Now here's Josh with our top story this evening.
Thank you, Kobe. Good evening. Good evening, Matt. The Repco Supercars Championship begins a new season this weekend at Mount Panorama with a pair of 250-kilometer races for the Bathurst 500. Lots of new faces in new places with no shortage of drama as well. The face of the championship, Shane van Gisbergen, left Supercars for NASCAR, and Brodie Kostecki isn't competing due to an ongoing legal dispute with Airbus Motorsport. With SVG gone from Triple Eight, Will Brown will replace him as Brock Feeney's teammate. Replacing Brown at Airbus is Jack LeBrock, while Todd Hazelwood takes Kostecki's seat. Photo courtesy there of Red Bull and Pole Racing. Now, given the turmoil happening over Airbus, can Triple Eight take advantage of this and reclaim their spot as the top team?
Easily, Josh. Easily. I think Triple Eight has had the most uneventful offseason that you can possibly have. But, losing Shane van Gisbergen is a big deal. The top driver in the series, one of the best, that you've ever seen in the Supercars Championship. And replacing him is not going to be easy. Will Brown coming in, I'm sure he's going to feel a lot of pressure to perform. He's definitely no SVG. But Will Brown certainly has a lot to prove. He was looking like one of the championship contenders last season who could really take the fight to his former team, to his teammate Brodie Kostecki at the time. But when the second half of the season came around, Will Brown just basically fell off a cliff and he was really nowhere. So Will Brown is going to this team, Red Bull and Pole Racing, replacing SVG. It's going to be quite a challenge for him. It's going to be interesting to see how he works alongside Brock Feeney. But the good thing is, they've already been working close together over the offseason, trying to get the chemistry going. Feeney and Brown ran a Triple Eight Mercedes in the Bathurst 12-hour last weekend. So that's very helpful in getting the team chemistry going and making sure that they can hit the ground running this coming weekend when they get in their supercar and try to go out there and do what Red Bull and Pole Racing knows best, fighting for wins, podiums, and championships. And I really think that this could be the year where we could see this team get back on top, especially with all the turmoil going on at Airbus Motorsport. We don't really need to go too deep into that because we've been talking about this story for the last few weeks. And Airbus, they recently just showed their new livery for this upcoming season, and it's very, very interesting. Has a lot of white on it and have like some sponsors, but it is quite a departure from the Coca-Cola racing entry that we saw last season. And in 2024, it's going to be quite a challenge for Airbus to try to overcome everything that's happened with Brodie Kostecki drama that's going on behind the scenes with Brodie not being with the team. And then losing Coca-Cola and other major sponsors as well, and the team pretending that everything is okay to the public when it's really not. So there's going to be a lot to look at this year. Can Airbus overcome all of the drama that's happened in the last few months or so, and can Triple Eight get back on top?
Yeah, indeed. Really looking forward to this weekend. It's still very strange that we start the season at Mount Panorama. We did it a couple of years ago when we were in the pandemic, but we're back again this time because of Newcastle Street Circuit going away. We're back for Bathurst 2 races at the weekend, the 50 Bathurst 500. Can Red Bull take the fight to pick up the mantle from last year? The original question, certainly you would think so. It was kind of Airbus versus Red Bull for most of last season, apart from at the end of the year when we had a little parity shift and Ford came back into it with wins for Cam Waters and Matt Payne towards the end of the season on the two street tracks at Surfers Paradise and Adelaide. There has been all the parity stuff going on over the winter. Hopefully, everything crossed that we don't have to go through the season that we did last year with all the parity chat, because after a few rounds it just got very, very tiresome. We can get underway at the weekend. Everybody's on the same spec as such, and the Fords can be closer. Erebus, as you said, Kobe, you know, that they're carrying on as if nothing's happened, apart from the fact that the car looks completely different. It's gone. Any Supercars fans from back in the day will remember when Jim Beam disappeared from Dick Johnson Racing after James Courtney left. They had a sort of a white and black livery for most of that season as they tried to scramble for sponsorship with the whole Charlie Schwerkow fallout in 2010-11, whenever that was. It's a bit of the same as that, white and black car with some sponsor stickers all stamped over it. 2 new drivers in the team. Jack Brock looked like he was going to come in there as a real solid number 2 to Brodie. And as we know, and as you've mentioned, and we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, Kostecki is not there. Will he come back for the Grand Prix, which is the next round, the Formula 1 Australian Grand Prix support races? We'll have to wait and see. But he's missing for this weekend, and surely Red Bull and Pole Triple Eight will be the ones to beat at the Mountain this weekend. But it's going to be interesting to see how close Erebus will be, and as I've said before, how close any of the Fords will be over this weekend.
Yes, another big change happening is Tickford Racing downsizing from a 4-car team to a 2-car team. Cam Waters and Thomas Randall remain with the team, but James Courtney has moved over to the Blanchard Racing team, and Declan Fraser has signed with Brad Jones Racing as an endurance driver. Now, due to rivals departing, Waters is expected to have one of his best chances to win the championship. We also saw Randall grow significantly as a driver last season and earned his spot on the grid for 2024 by showing his potential. Now, do you see the downsize helping Tickford become more of a threat to win races?
Surely it streamlines the focus for these two, who were by a long way their 2 lead drivers last year. You mentioned Courtney and Decker Fraser moving aside. So they've been a 4-car model at that team for a very, very long time. And they have, this, as you said, this has got to be Waters' best chance. Randall was very impressive at times last year towards the back end and the season before, and has been on pole positions and got podiums to his name now. It'd be great to see Thomas get up there and get a win. There's a cool story. He battled his way through the junior categories and got his way up there. Was almost on the cusp of getting into the championship. Then had a bout of testicular cancer, which he overcame a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic. But he's fought off that, and here we are. He's in the one of, if not, you would say maybe the joint equal best Ford team, along with Shell, DJR, with a real chance to go at Red Bull. He's picked up the Coca-Cola backing that has disappeared from Erebus, by the way. It's a Castrol Coca-Cola livery for Thomas Randall this season, which looks really, really good. But Tickford, the streamline has to be their, as you say, their best chance. Can the monster car of Cam Waters lead the Ford charge? We will wait to see.
Yeah, man, I totally agree with you. I think Tickford downsizing to a 2-car team is definitely for the best. And anyways, last year when we saw Cam Waters and Thomas Randall on track, they were always the 2 leading Tickford cars. And then I always jokingly said, looking at James Courtney and Declan Fraser, are these the 2 R&D cars? Because they always seem to be way off compared to Cam Waters and Thomas Randall. And now that you're downsizing the team, you can add more personnel to Waters' team and Randall's team, and you can truly try to iron out what all the problems have been in the last few years and try to make these cars a lot faster. And I think that downsizing can only do wonders for Waters and Randall. I think that they could really be a threat to win quite a number of races this season. And it would not surprise me if we see one of those Tickford Racing Ford Mustangs battling for the championship, since it's wide open this year. Yeah, but I think Tickford definitely made the right decision to downsize here, and we'll see throughout the course of the season if it's going to pay off.
Yes, another team that could challenge Tickford as the top 4 team is Walkinshaw Andretti United. Like Waters, Chaz Mostert as well has a chance to stake his claim on this championship, with this year being wide open. Mostert will have a new teammate this year, with rookie Ryan Ward replacing Nick Perscat as well, who moves over to Mountstone Racing to try and save his career. Meanwhile, the Shell V-Power of Dick Johnson Racing drivers Anton de Pascal and Will Davidson look to rebound from a down year. So the question is, can Mostert be a serious title contender this year, and will Dick Johnson Racing improve on last year's results?
I'll start with the first part of that question. I think Chaz Mostert can potentially be a championship contender this year. We know he's definitely a top driver in this series. And if Walkinshaw Andretti United can give him a car to let him do his thing, I really think Chaz Mostert can really solidify himself towards the top of the grid. And like I said, he has been a top driver, but the cars he's been in, it just hasn't, lived up to, Chaz Mostert's standards. So I really think that the team over the offseason, needed to go to work and try to build him faster cars to try to put Chaz in the best possible position to be successful. Yeah, and looking forward to seeing what his new teammate Ryan Wood can do. Watched him last year in the Dunlap Super 2 Series. Saw some good things for him and stepping up to the main game this year. That I think that's a young driver who has a lot of potential. I'm sure he's going to be leaning on Chaz a lot this year. And Dick Johnson Racing, the second part of that question, I think we could see some improvement from the team. Last year was kind of weird, first year of this new Gen 3 car, Dick Johnson Racing, they've always been one of the top teams in supercars, but last year, kind of had quite a down year. We didn't see Anton De Pasquale, Will Davison up front mixing up like we have seen them in the past, and it'll be interesting to see if they can bounce back in 2024. I think they have the potential to, but last year is a year, they definitely don't want to see happen again, considering everything that organization has accomplished.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Kobe. On Mostert, he's got the team around him now. And apart from winning the Bathurst 1000 a couple of years ago with Lee Holsworth as his teammate, really hasn't kind of gelled really together over a consistent period. He has lost his long-time engineer, Adam DeBore, though, over the winter. He's shifted off to another team in Super 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chaz goes with a new engineer through this year and how quickly they can gel together. And Ryan Wood, his teammate, as you mentioned, he's been terrific in his 1 year in Super 2, got a couple of victories at Perth last year and really did stand out as one of the shining stars to watch coming through. So good to see him getting a main game seat. Totally agree with Adam, and that's what we're saying. The championship is wide open this year. As for DJR, they were the Ford homologation team last year, and it just never came good for them, apart from Anton's win in Townsville, where he had a bit of a tyre advantage. Let's not forget. They were a bit anonymous. I really don't remember Will Davison being at the front of the field at all last year. So they've really got to get around that team and get it pushing in the right direction, because, a couple of years ago, they were the Form 4 team. Scott McLaughlin won championship after championship and a Bathurst with that team. The 1000 race, not the 500, of course, which we've got coming up this weekend. But they've really got to kick on. And I think if they've got the parity right with the Shell cars, Mostert and Waters, we can have a good bunch of Fords up there against the Red Bulls and the Erebuses of this world.
All right, Matt. Before we move on to the next thing, I wanted to add one more point about Dick Johnson Racing. Free agency heading into 2025 is going to be very interesting looking at that team, because they have young Kai Allen, who's a lot of people think could be a star in a supercar series someday. And if Anton De Pasquale, Will Davison, they don't perform this year, one of them or even both of them could be out after 2024. So, and we have someone like Kai Allen who has this great potential to do great things in supercars someday. Like he might be the next best option for Dick Johnson Racing if one or both of their drivers are underperforming. So I think that's the storyline we'll have to follow throughout the season. Yeah,
exactly. And for Will, I mean, he's at the back end, a little bit twilight of his career. So if it's continuing to be on a little bit of a downward slope, and they've got Kai Allen, who I would think, I'm not entirely sure, but I would imagine he's doing Super 2 again this year, is still there and banging on the door, a bit like we talked about with Kimi Antonelli a couple of weeks ago at Mercedes in Formula 1. If he's there and going, hello, give me a ride, please, they may shuffle the deck for next year. It's a good point you bring up, Kobe. That's another little wind of the storylines that we're going to have to keep our eye on for the year.
Just noticed there's a giant spider crawl up from behind Lewis Hamilton's 3D photo I've got behind the television in the commentary box, crawl up across a Hot Wheels Formula E car, and now is alongside the Ferrari flag that I got from Italy. I think it is, it's just, what is it?
The commentary box.
Yeah, that's it. 5. He wants 5, he says. High fives. All right, okay. We'll see if he goes for 5 this year. Anyway, those 4 teams will be it's crawling up the side of the camera. So if you it's literally now making a thing across to the monitor. If a spider comes across the monitor on the camera, just a fair warning. I'll try and get it away when we ask the next question, but it's right next to it. So I apologize if anybody is scared of spiders because it's crawling quite close to it. But those 4 teams will be very interesting to watch this year as well. But don't sleep on Grove Racing. Matt Payne got his first win in the season finale in Adelaide, and his new teammate Richie Stanaway replaces Team 18 bound David Reynolds after winning the Bathurst 1000 last year with Triple A as SVG's co-driver. Now, based on how the Penrite Fords ran last year, especially towards the end of the season, it wouldn't be a surprise to see them mixing it up at the front. So will Matt Payne and Richie Stanaway surprise some people in this coming season?
Stanaway, for sure, will be one to watch this year. He has a Bathurst 1000 victory and a Sandown 500 victory to his name in his, albeit short Supercars career. He was in full-time a couple of years ago with Gary Rogers Motorsport. It didn't work out, and he didn't make it to the end of the season. He was benched towards the end of the year. But this is a guy that's been at Le Mans with Aston Martin as a works driver. He's won races in Formula 2. He is no mean peddler, and he will be very, very quick. As I said before, if the Ford parity is where it should be against the Camaros this year, then we will see both those Penrite cars up the front. Matt Payne broke through at the end of last season to win the final race of the year at Adelaide, much like Brock Feeney did the year before. And we saw how well Brock Feeney's second season as a full-time driver went last year. So do expect both of those guys to be in the conversation for race wins as the year rolls through.
Yeah, for sure. I was very impressed with Matt Payne during the second half of the 2023 season. I thought we really watched him grow up from the start of the season towards the end, and getting that victory in Adelaide, that was really huge, and a lot of great momentum that he's going to be able to carry into the new season starting this weekend with the Bathurst 500. And I think Matt Payne certainly has a great future in Supercar. I think he can establish himself as one of the top drivers, and to see the improvement Grove Racing's made with their program, I think Matt Payne is in a really good place. And some people were disappointed that Triple Eight decided to sign Will Brown over Richie Stanaway, especially after Richie did a great job in his co-driver role at Triple Eight. But I still think Richie Stanaway is in a really good place as well. He's still going to be in a competitive seat. He's still going to, be in contention to finish in the top 10, top 5, and maybe potentially win some races. Like you were mentioning, Matt, Richie Stanaway is a really good race car driver. You don't become an Aston Martin factory driver, for nothing. Yeah, he was a factory driver at Aston Martin. We saw him racing open wheel cars in Europe and finding some great success there. So, and now he's coming back to Supercars after you mentioned, first stint didn't really work out. So, so I think Richie realizes the opportunity he has now, and we'll see Matt Payne and Richie Stanaway certainly surprise some people this year. I think this is a very exciting driver pairing to keep an eye on this season.
And given all the star power that we've already talked about, is Supercars still in good hands despite Shane van Gisbergen and Brodie Kostecki not being on the grid for the season opener at the Bathurst 500?
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal for your defending champion and Brodie Kostecki to be absent on the grid. I'm sure Brodie wishes he could be racing this weekend, and it's really unfortunate that we're not going to see him, be in contention for this year's championship. Even if Brodie, were to miraculously return to Erebus for the Grand Prix race weekend at Albert Park, he by that point he already missed 2 races, so the championship would basically be over for him, so he wouldn't have a chance to go out there and win the championship, which is obviously frustrating for any race car driver. And Shane van Gisbergen left for NASCAR. Scott McLaughlin left a few years ago for IndyCar as well. So the only past champion, we only have one past champion on the grid now. So not having those championship drivers on the grid, I know in past episodes of Grid Tonight we talked about the face of the Supercars Championship. And what is Supercars going to do with all their top drivers, leaving and all of this? But we've already talked about a great handful of drivers tonight who can truly establish themselves as the face of the series. As Adam said in his comment, Supercars is wide open right now, and anybody can step up to the plate, and replace the the star power that we've seen from the Scott McLaughlins, the Shane van Gisbergens, and the Brodie Kosteckis of the world. Just talked about Matt Payne, Richie Stanaway, 2 great young drivers, Chaz Mostert, Cam Waters, some great veterans of the series. Thomas Randall, great up and comer as well, and Brock Feeney. another great young driver, and Will Brown has shown great potential as well. So I think the series certainly has a lot of talent heading into the 2024 season, and I think it's still going to be an exciting championship, especially now when you're looking at who you're going to pick for our pick of winners this year. A lot of people, traditionally pick Shane Van Gisbergen every single week. Now he's not here, and a lot of us were thinking this year we're probably going to pick Brodie Kostecki every single week, and now he's not here. So who are we going to pick now for pick a winner? It's completely wide open. Maybe we'll have to ask Joe to give us a Supercars Wheel of Destiny to try to pick a winner this year. Yeah, maybe we'll see a lot more parity this year than we've seen in recent years. And gonna catch up on some comments here in the chat room. Right here from John 82 says that even as an Aussie, those Kiwis can sure pedal. And then Lindsay Weston says that your work with Stanaway, you've always thought he had a complex about him. You say like he thought he'd come in and compete at Tickford and then got smashed. And then you also add that New Zealand has a good junior series. Yeah, the talent down under Australia, New Zealand is just fantastic to see how great those drivers are. And this season of Supercars, I'm really excited to see what we have ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. As you mentioned, Kobe, we've got no Scott McLaughlin, no Shane Van Gisbergen, no Brodie Kostecki. Further back than that, no Jamie Whincup, no Craig Lowndes on the grid. The big names have all kind of departed the series in one shape or form. And we've got this new bunch of guys now with, as Adam said, it's open. We've talked about it before on the show. Mostert, Waters, Feeney, Brown, Stanaway, Payne. There's so many guys that are going to be up there trying to win races. Todd Hazelwood's got a great chance this weekend to really make a story. The door has been opened for him. His supercar door was kind of closed. He was coming back to Erebus as a endurance driver for Sandown and Bathurst later in the year. He's doing Trans Am, and I think he's doing Porsches as well this year on the support bill. And now he's got this great chance at Erebus. Really, if he can get on the podium a couple of times across the weekend, and then if he keeps in the seat at the Grand Prix and continues that form, then it's going to be huge for him. So looking forward to seeing how that goes. I think the Supercars, the series is in a good health from a driver talent standpoint. They just need to let some of the drivers be themselves on television and in interviews and on podcasts and whatever else, because they're a great bunch of guys, and they're a little bit. We saw the whole Shane Van Gisbergen thing at Newcastle last year, where he was told to keep his comments to himself about how the new cars were performing and such like. We touched on it on the show at the time, but let's hope they've learned from that and the cars are all better and we can get on with the show this weekend. Good evening to Matthew Owens behind the mic. He says it's been a NASCAR-like mass exodus with Gordon Stewart, Kenseth Earnhardt, and when Johnson left, it's time for Supercars versions of Larson, Elliott, Blaney, and Byron to show up. And I don't disagree with that. And me and Kobe have mentioned your Ryan Woods, your Kai Allens, Jet Johnson coming through as well, with a big name, family name coming through. So the melting pot of the Supercars driver pool is there. Let's hope they can pull some irons out of the fire this year. And with those big names at the top end of town gone, if the parity is right, I keep mentioning we need to see if this parity is going to be right this year. We could have a tremendous Supercar season. Let's hope that we do. We mentioned pick a winner there, Kobe. We brought it up the schedule for the show tonight because of Supercars being on early on a Saturday morning. There is the standings with Matt B at the top. Nobody scored any points at the weekend with some random results, especially at Rally Sweden, which we'll get to later on in Hots and Knots. So we're going to do our pick a winner now for the Saturday Supercars race. Of course, there'll be one on Sunday, and NASCAR Cup Series as part of pick a winner at Atlanta this weekend on Sunday, hopefully Sunday, after all the weather delays last weekend. You can get across hashtag pick a winner on the Grid Network socials. Supercars race 1 on Saturday at Bathurst. We said how open it's going to be, but the surefire pick to do something this weekend, and he has a redemption arc story to him because he had a chance of winning the 1000 last year and it went away late with a gear selector issue. My pick for Saturday is going to be Brock Feeney.
Yeah, man, don't disagree at all. I also think Brock Feeney's going to get the win on Saturday as well, although people like to call him Mr. Sunday since he typically wins on Sunday. But I think this time he'll get the job done on a Saturday. And Adam Limerick is also in agreement with us for Brock Feeney to get it done at Mount Panorama in race 1. And then Lindsay Weston also says that she picked Esapek Halapi on the picker winner for World Rally Championship. And then Joe says he'll get that updated and get your name on our leaderboard, so you'll see that the next time for pick a winner. Now, Josh, who you think's going to get race 1 at Mount Panorama?
Well, I was thinking the same as you guys with Brock Feeney with the 888 car, but I'm going to go a bit different. I'm going to go new blood, only because I've seen him race eons ago now in GP3. I'm going to go with Stanaway to take a win in race 1 on debut. But my heart is going to say, yeah, I hope I'm still there. Did you get that end bit?
Yeah, we
got
most of
no idea if you got that end bit or not with me saying Brock Feeney. Oh, good. Stanaway, but my heart says Brock Feeney, but I'll go with Stanaway just because I don't want to be the same as everybody else on that one. Now, you might be wondering why, A, I'm standing, and B, wearing a headset. That's because everything has been set up for one very special reason, despite the fact it being a long day for me. Today was day 1 of Formula One pre-season testing in Bahrain, and it ended with a familiar face topping the charts. Red Bull and Max Verstappen had the fastest lap time of the day, and look at that, 1.140 seconds ahead of McLaren's Lando Norris, who ran in the afternoon's session. Verstappen also had the best lap time in all 3 sectors. The RB20 is off to a solid start after 142 laps run on the opening day. Only 2 drivers didn't set a lap time today: Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez and Mercedes' Lewis Hamilton. Perez is in the car tomorrow morning, Hamilton's in the car tomorrow afternoon, with Russell completing the AM slot before he's done for testing. The graphic courtesy there of Formula One as well. Not one single red flag, nothing across the board, and it was pretty much felt like a bit of a practice session today. So after watching Red Bull and Verstappen set the fastest lap on day 1, do you fear that this is an early sign of another dominant season, or is it still too early to say?
Josh, dare I say, congratulations to 2024 Formula One World Champion Max Verstappen on another great championship season. But in all seriousness, like I really think that Red Bull. Well, I thought this last year, but I believe that Red Bull, is probably going to win the championship again. The constructors, and Max Verstappen is more than likely going to be the world champion yet again, and starting the first day of testing 1.140 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. The rest of the competition has to be like, oh my goodness, here we go again. We've already seen this story. And the thing is, Red Bull probably still hasn't even shown their full hand with the car. So how much faster could this car potentially be? It could be even faster than what we already saw on day 1. But looking at all the lap times across the board, it's still probably too early to see where everybody stands at this point. Just after 1 day of testing, still got a couple of days more of this, and then we're also gonna have the season starting up very soon, and then we're gonna have a handful of races early on the season to evaluate where everybody stands. But I still think that this is an indication, that 2024 is still going to be Max Verstappen and Red Bull's playground.
Yes, if you were hoping for a shake-up to the running order for Formula One in 2024, I'm sad to say it might not happen, because that is an ominous start for Red Bull. No problems, so many laps on the board, and it was very, very fast. He was 0.7 ahead at lunchtime and then extended his advantage in the afternoon. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow when Perez gets in the car. We saw last year how much of an offset there was between the 2 Red Bull drivers. Will that continue into this year with this new car? Max P1, surely not, says Matthew. I know. Amazing, isn't it? Let's see what, McLaren looked fairly good today. Lando Norris had a floor issue in the afternoon after he took over from Oscar Piastri, who did the morning running. As you mentioned, Josh, Lewis Hamilton still to sample the Mercedes and won't get to have a go until tomorrow afternoon once George Russell gets an extra few hours done in the morning. But we're straight into the Grand Prix next weekend. we talked about pick a winner before, and it was fairly simple picking for supercars recently with SVG and McLaughlin before that. I feel like we may have a Verstappen across the board pick for the Bahrain Grand Prix next weekend. Of course, that is on a Saturday. Let's not forget these first 2 Grand Prix of the season on Saturdays in Bahrain and in Jeddah the week after. But yeah, looks pretty ominous from here on out. But we've still got 2 days of testing to go, and everyone else could have just been doing their own thing, doing their own run plan. And maybe by this time on Friday, we'll have more of an idea of how far away Red Bull are or not.
Drawing a little diagram here. So this is what Red Bull have really come up with. Now, they've got a new side pod initiative where the engine cover, as I've displayed here, with these 2 lines vertically here and here, and that's the engine cover. Now, normally an engine cover comes off in one long piece. So you take it off the car and you pull it back. What Adrian Newey's designed this year is that the engine cover actually splits down the center. So one half can come off and then the second half can come off. The reason it doesn't need to be 2 identical pieces is because it no longer has to wrap around the side of the air intakes. Now, this, I'm going to use blue. So on last year's car, the air intakes were quite large across both cars. And that used to drag the airflow underneath the floor whilst also curving it across the old front wing. So the old side part of the floor. So there's the floor going downwards. That goes down towards the rear wing, creates the DRS. The air gets sucked in from there, cools the engine from here behind the driver's head and goes out from the side. Now, that was last year's concept with a big, normal, open like AirPod. This year, they've turned what was a horizontal into a vertical strip. Now, on this side, there is a very small vertical line in green. So just up here, I'll put it here for you. And then that becomes a horizontal line. So I'll go like this for you and really colour it in. So now the air intake is a short string of nothing. And what that does is it drags the airflow completely underneath the car, where Adrian Newey is a genius, and his ground effect pulls that air from under the car and completely channels it towards the rear wing and along the axis of the new engine covers. Fantastic engineering design, because what it's now doing is that air intake that used to hit the floor and go on the outside of the floor towards the rear tire is now getting sucked underneath the floor onto a new winglet design that nobody knows what the new floor of the Red Bull looks like. We'll find that out in Monaco if it stops. So last year's car in blue pulled the engine cover and used it to have the rear tires on flow through. This year, vertical pulls the air completely along the line of the engine cover underneath the underside of the floor instead of being on top, and pulls it along to the DRS perfectly. So Red Bull last year started off with an insane. They've started this year with an evolution of that, where the air's not coming from above the car, it's coming from underneath the car and getting blown up. That's getting helped by the pull rod suspension at the front of the car. So instead of a push rod suspension where the wheels get pushed out, they're getting pulled in to the corner. So as you turn, it's getting pulled in. Whereas in a normal car, it's pushed out. So it pushes the wheel. So in terms of having a car go like that, the car goes like that on entry. And all that is sucking the air underneath the floor and completely towards the rear wing. So hopefully that little crude diagram has explained why Red Bull today were so fast. And they don't even have all of the upgrades on the car. They're still running a basic version. Now, that is quite worrying to what we're going to see on days 2 and 3. So there's just a quick little mock-up at Red Bull, and I can't wait until we get that. I'm going to film a feature, and hopefully we'll have time to show it on a grid pre-show, where I properly have a look at that car and get in with it and get all sorts of lines and graphs on. It's going to be hilarious. I can't wait. Now, looking at the bottom of the day 1 charts, Haas F1 were the slowest with Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg. They were in 17th and 18th respectively. Now, in an article on motorsport.com, Haas F1 team principal Ayo Kamamatsu said that the team plans to use Bahrain pre-season testing to prioritise solving last year's tyre issues instead of overall performance. Now, both Haas cars were 4.348 and 4.562 seconds off the pace on day 1. Matt and Kobe, I've taken a breath now for all that. Will this different approach be a good thing, or does it seem like a long season ahead for Haas? And should I apply for Art Attack?
Thank you, Ted. You don't need to pay out loads of money for Sky F1. We've got our own technical guru in Josh in the commentary box with his different coloured pens. I mean, Haas at their launch, didn't they? They said this season was going to be, not great, which is not what you want to do when you launch your car. But here we are. Don't read too much into the fact that they were 4 seconds off because, once we get to the Grand Prix proper next weekend, it'll be a hell of a lot closer than that. We hope for them. But there's a long way to go. They're the most, not underfunded, but they're, resourceful team on the grid. Let's hope, much like last year, that they just get a handle on things and don't get cut adrift. So basically, it'll be an 18-car Grand Prix with Haas in F1.5 running around somewhere behind them, trying to keep themselves out of dodge of the 107% rule. I don't think we're going to be in that kind of world. Let's hope not. But again, as I said before about Red Bull, we need to wait until we get to the end of the 3 days on Friday and see where everybody is. And then all of the journos and the Joshes of the world will dive into all of the numbers, crunch them all over the weekend, and see where we all come out next week when we get to free practice 1 proper for the Grand Prix. But it does look bad on paper for Haas, but I'm pretty certain it isn't as bad as it looks.
Yeah, looks can be deceiving sometimes, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing like how much different Haas is going to be this year. Departing from Gunther Steiner now and going to Ayao Komatsu, the new team principal there, and just see how this team operates. Under the new leadership, can he try to do what Gunther Steiner wasn't able to do and try to get Haas on an upward trend and try to get them a little further up the grid. But yeah, Matt, I don't really have much to add from anything that you were saying. It doesn't look good on paper for Haas right now. Being almost 4.5 seconds off the pace here, and if it's like that, once we get to the Grand Prix weekend of the Bahrain Grand Prix official race weekend, then they'll be in trouble. But I tend to agree with you that it'll probably be a lot closer, once we get down to the nitty gritty and all of this, because I'm sure, all the teams are, running their own programs and trying different things and testing to see what works, what doesn't, and what data they can collect. And at the end of the day, it's probably across the board, not representative of the true pace of all the teams. But yeah, that was a great point you brought up about the car launch, saying, that basically this season will be tough. That really doesn't inspire a lot of confidence for your team and drivers. So it seems like that this season is going to be all about Haas trying to, make the best of the situation and the hand that they've been dealt so far this year.
I've signed it. So if anybody wants it, let me know. Signed it. All done. Anyway, it's time to wrap up the big stories of today and check out the latest from the Grid EPI update. For that, I'll hand over to Matt.
Thank you, Josh. And we've now had race number 7. I'm just making sure I had it up on the screen on my phone to get the number. Race number 7 of the 2024 Grid Endurance Performance Index out the weekend. It was a place we were talking about a little while earlier on in the show. Bathurst, for the Repco Bathurst 12-hour at the weekend, won by Porsche, the Manthey EMA team of Lawrence Vanfor, Archie Guban and Matt Campbell getting the race win in a race filled with safety cars and rain and all kinds of conditions, but they powered through in the end, and they had 2 drive-through penalties, one of which they served incorrectly, so they had to come back through again. But they came through to take the victory. That's 2 wins now for Matt Campbell on the 2 real big races of the year so far. Daytona a couple of weeks ago at the Rolex, and now Bathurst this last weekend just gone. So expect for Matt Campbell to be somewhere in the mix when the first Grid Endurance Performance Index ranking comes out live on this show on Wednesday, the 3rd of April. We'll have the premiere of the Grid Endurance Performance Index week 1 after Easter, and Matt Campbell surely will be in the top 10. And if his streak continues, in a couple of weeks' time, he'll be on the podium, maybe on the top step of it, at Qatar for the first round of the FIA WEC, which gets underway on the same weekend, on the same day, in the same part of the world as the F1 race in Bahrain. I thought we weren't supposed to be doing that anymore with FIA World Championship races, but here we are. So a week off this week for the Grid EPI. Only one of 3 weekends off between now and December for it. So no more spreadsheet collaborating for me on Monday with any results. We've got a week off, and then it's the WEC, which we will potentially do a bit of more of a preview on the show next week, depending on how the news goes. But that's it for the Grid EPI update for this week. Let's go back to Kobe with some more of the week's headlines.
Thanks, Matt. Time for some more motorsports news from around the world. Only got 2 stories for you this week. Been kind of a slow news week, but Kyle Busch will make his return to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series this season with Spire Motorsports. He'll be in the number 7 Chevrolet Silverado starting this weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Then Las Vegas, Bristol Spring Race, Texas, and Darlington will complete his schedule before the 2024 season. Remember, Spire Motorsports purchased the assets of Kyle Busch Motorsports, which included the race shop and chassis business, Ratty Manufacturing. Busch said a lot of his former KBM employees transition over to Spire, and he'll be working with the same group from last year with crew chief Brian Patty, but it'll feel bittersweet for him not being in a truck with a KBM decal in his number 51. And now a story from IndyCar. 2-time Indianapolis 500 champion Takuma Sato will make his return to Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing to attempt this year's race. Amada America Incorporated will serve as the primary sponsor on Sato's number 75 Honda. Sato won the 2020 Indy 500 at RLL, and he's looking for his 3rd win in the greatest spectacle in racing. Last year, Sato only ran the oval race with Chip Ganassi Racing. This year, it's an Indy-only program with familiar faces. Photo courtesy of Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. And now I'm going to turn over to Matt for Hots and Knots.
Busy weekend it was, of course, at the weekend with Bathurst, with NASCAR at Daytona, and Rally Sweden as well up in the Great North. So, Josh, it's time for our Hots and Knots natterings. I'll let you take the floor of your hots from the week.
Hots for me. I really actually enjoyed the Daytona 500. I thought that was quite well done from NASCAR to just postpone it on the Sunday, give us it on the Monday, let the fans know early on, let us know early on so we weren't just sitting around talking about nothing. Enabled us to do the Grid Network pre-race show a whole day early. That got a lot of views over the 24 hours with people wanting to know what was happening, and nobody else went on air. Fox, I think, went on air about an hour after we did for their usual race day build-up show. So it was nice to have that. Very much an enjoyable 500. And I think another hot from this week, a good Qatar test for MotoGP. We now know that the Ducatis are strong. We know that Marquez is, I think, up to date with it. And all signs point to a great MotoGP season when we get going on March the 10th. And one more hot, I'd have to say that I think sleep is for wimps at this point, because I'm not sleeping. And I'm running on, I don't know what I'm running on anymore, to be fair. It's been a long couple of weeks since the Rolex 24. Hasn't really stopped since then, once we got going proper. And that's about it for the hots, I think. It's been a busy couple of weeks.
It has, and it only kicks on from here with Formula One next weekend, MotoGP the weekend after, and. Ben's hot was the Daytona 500 actually ending at, well, mile 500. I've yet to see it. I've seen who won, of course, but I will catch up on that because I'm currently watching through one of my hots, which is just Bathurst. It's just great, and the 12-hour was excellent. I've got 3 hours of it to go. Again, as you know, because I've just told you who won the race. I know the result. Another hot, although it was extremely cold, was Rally Sweden at the weekend. Tremendous. Friday was absolutely crazy. Rovanperä out, Tanak out. Katsuta looked like he was going to be in with a shot on Saturday morning of getting his first rally win. Then he got stuck in a snowbank. 6 years since his only rally win, Esa-Pekka Lappi comes through to take victory. And on Hyundai's socials Sunday afternoon, him and Jarne Firm in the sauna, cracking beers with the trophy. Excellent bit of social media from the Hyundai team. I thought that was tremendous. Oliver Solberg in WRC2 was just dominant and was third on Friday in the WRC2 car. Just that kind of stuff never happens, but it was tremendous. Another hot was what you mentioned, Josh, actually, was NASCAR. We mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when we were at the Clash, getting ahead of the weather and getting stuff done before it was too late. You know, we've seen there was a race at Dover a few years ago where they did one lap at the beginning and then they had to, and that was it. And that was the day gone. they could have just called that. The rain came at the time. We've had a couple of Daytona 500s recently where we've run like 5 laps and stopped for the rest of the day and had to come back. It's good to see that they moved the ARCA race on Friday, got that done, although that's coming up in a moment. And then obviously the Sunday was a complete washout, as most of Saturday was as well. So again, from a couple of weeks ago, a repeat hot. I think that's the first time we've had a repeat hot. NASCAR getting ahead of the weather. Adam Grace, William Byron winning for Hendrick on their 40th anniversary in the special livery as well. The weekend, that was very, very cool. Conversely, Matthew Owens is the finish to the 500. There's going to be a Matthew versus Ben discussion going on here. The air getting let out of the balloon 1 lap early is always disappointing to me, as Josh hides himself under the desk. Ben, not Larry Mack not being able to crew chief at Daytona due to Fox sending him back to Charlotte because he had to cover the race at Daytona. Yeah, he was supposed to be a crew chief in the Xfinity race.
That was weird.
He does the TV from Charlotte rather than from the track. And yeah, that's a big knot on week 1 of NASCAR, I suppose, for the broadcasting side of things. Lindsay says Lappy was brilliant. Heartbreak for Taka. Solberg has come into his own. The Toyota R1 and R2 were relatively no shows. Yeah, bit of a slow weekend for Toyota in kind of their second home race, a third, I guess, if you include Valley Japan, which is where they're from, because I was going with Finland as their home base. Not Josh.
Season hasn't even started yet. We're 3 strikes out already.
Yeah.
Usual social media again. 2 strikes yesterday for an errand bot, one affecting Twitch, one affecting them in YouTube, and then today getting the strike on the F1 testing on the backup YouTube channel. I'll tell you what, for content creators and journalists and media like all of us, there needs to be greater control over the content that we put out, because it is getting a bit silly now. But I'll tell you what, fantastic team here at the Grid Network. Always help me out with everything. Fantastic. Great for Matthew as well, who's let me use the USRN YouTube channel so we can keep live on YouTube. And also, just one final note on this is the fact that it takes so long to get it right, and it's so exhausting. So we've got 3 strikes already. We haven't even started the season. So that's a knot. Another knot, I'm going to throw in the red flag and the big one at Daytona. I'm not going to say why, because I'm not going to spoil for it, but that was not needed. Going forward, I think the final knot has to come from the fact that this F1 test, it felt too much like a practice session today, this one, and it's not preseason test anymore. I don't know if that's a compliment of how good the TV production is nowadays, or a negative, because this preseason testing used to be about the teams having a complete free-for-all to try anything and to get the cars, updated and run. And I think we've lost that sense of mystery about the test. I was trackside at Barcelona 2019, and you had that mystery because you had to sit there and you go, now what's the Red Bull got on? The peer through glasses. What's that Racing Point got? How are they looking through the corners? And I remember standing on a dustbin looking over at the chicane at the last 2 corners in Barcelona and seeing exactly which car was having problems coming through the corners. And it was like, I know something nobody else knows. Brilliant. When we get to race 1, I'll be looking out for that and I'll say it. And now we've got onboards, we've got team radios, I've got telemetry. I've had more information in this session than I've ever had before. I can see when people are using the throttle, when they're not. It feels like we've lost the mystery of preseason testing a little bit. And I think the teams need to be given some of that back. We need that mystery to create the storylines going into the year. I mean, we've got Christian Horner in this entire situation. He wasn't seen at all today, even though he was at the track. Didn't see him once. Didn't see him once, didn't hear about him once. No information I've heard from any of the usual sources. He was being completely like a ghost across it all. Wasn't on the pit wall either. The only Red Bull personnel on the pit wall actually was Jonathan Wheatley. And the camera sort of panned back from him at one point. And it like he was just, he'd done something rather smelly on the pit wall because nobody else was there. He was literally just all on his own. It was quite upsetting, really. And I don't know, it just feels like we've lost the mystery a bit of preseason testing. So they're my nuts as well.
I don't disagree with you on that, because remember 2009 when Brawn rocked up at Barcelona with this thrown together piece of kit car. That's kit, I said. It's a piece of kit. And suddenly they were fastest. And then we got to Australia, and it was like, wow, what's going to happen? Now we know already that we've seen today, and we talked about it earlier on. We know already. I don't disagree with you. It used to be sitting around waiting for an Autosport report at the end of the day, and you read it and go, oh, this has happened today, and he had a spin, and such had a problem. And now we get to see it all, which I agree is a bit of a knot. My knot is Mother Nature, just because it just got in the way at Daytona again this weekend. Please give us a break this weekend at Atlanta, please, because we've got trucks and Xfinity on Saturday back to back, and then the Cup race on Sunday. So please give us a break. Knots at Phillip Island in the Superbike test, which happened at the beginning of the week. The World Superbike kicks off at Phillip Island this weekend. Again, the Cape Barren geese do not learn. Please stay away from the racetrack, geese. And another hot, which I forgot, was Shane van Gisbergen getting a 12th place on his Xfinity debut. I think not for me from the races that did happen that did happen kind of on time on the Friday races. I've seen the ARCA race and I saw the truck race highlights. The driving standards in both of those series is so poor at times. It is laughable, and all we're doing at the moment on super speedway races in trucks and in ARCA is getting our wallets out and throwing them in the fire for teams. We need to stop it, because it's just getting worse by the season at the moment, and these are small underfunded teams that are just trying to catch a break, and all we're doing is tearing up cars on a regular basis in both series. And it will happen again when we get to Talladega in a few weeks' time, and probably Atlanta this weekend to some small degree as well. We were going to have a short show tonight. We've done almost 52 minutes. Of course, the biggest hot of the week, and you can see it rolling across the bottom of the screen, is that we have now just passed, just before we went on the air, 900 subscribers. So thank you to everybody that has subscribed here on the YouTube channel. And if we can get to the new target that we were just discussing before we went on air, if we can get to 1,000 by Easter, that'd be tremendous. So if you've enjoyed the show tonight and over the weekend and previously, like, subscribe, hit the bell, tell your friends, all that, and we can get to 1,000, and that'd be tremendous.
It would be brilliant. I can't wait for the day we get to 1,000. We must do a party as well, and all that. It'd be fantastic. I'll bring the champagne. Now, taking a look at our upcoming schedule as well, we're back to a normal run around, because Saturday, Grid Live pre-race is at noon Eastern. Sunday, Grid Live wrap-up, you know the drill, 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta. And Monday, Grid Live Encore, recapping the trucks and Xfinity doubleheader at Atlanta. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel now so you don't miss one of our biggest shows of the year. So much of the season starting now. We've got F1 kicking off next weekend, or MotoGP in a couple of weeks' time, WEC as well next weekend at Qatar. There's so much action to keep across. And of course, IndyCar starting again soon as well. Thank you for helping us reach the milestone 900 subscribers, as Matt said as well. Please do help us to get to the very special number that every YouTube channel dreams of, reaching the 1,000 subscribers. We're almost there. Help us to that checkered flag on the road to 1,000. You can hit the bell icon to get notifications when we go on air, and follow all of our social media platforms and visit gridranking.com. You can take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. Join Colin, Mark, Michelle, Robin, David and Matthew, who invest each month in the Grid Network, and we encourage you to join these fine folk who keep us on the air. And once we hit $500 per month, we can start sending our team to the track to cover more races and continue expanding our coverage. The link to all of that is in the video description. And like I said, I'll be trackside for the British Touring Car season launch on April 16th, and I'll be able to bring some content to the Grid Network show as well on the Wednesday. And if you want to do a one-time donation, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, get your name on the board and invest as much as you want, and you consider buying a specific on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you on the air. You can also support us by donating during our live streams through Super Chat as well. For Kobe Lambeth, when he pops in, and Matt White, there he is. Hello, Kobe. For Kobe Lambeth and Matt White from the Grid Endurance Performing Index. I'm Joshua Burch, master artist as well. I'm off now to paint the Mona Lisa, ready for tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.